former evangelical pastor calling to end religious exemptions for the COVID vaccine. In an op-ed, Curtis Chang writes, and I quote, "My plea to my fellow Christians, if you insist on refusing the vaccine, that is your right. But please do not bring God into it. Doing so is the very definition of violating the third commandment. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain." And Curtis Chang is out front now. He is the former pastor and co-founder of Christians and the Vaccine, a campaign working to persuade evangelicals to get vaccinated. So Curtis, in your op-ed, you talk about this, and you say religious exemptions for the COVID vaccine make a mockery of Christianity and religious liberty. Those are your words. Tell me why.
Well, they make a mockery of religious liberty because religious exemptions require a religious belief to be sincerely held to justify that exemption. And there's simply, in Christianity, there is no religious belief that justifies not taking the vaccine. There's no scripture, there's no creed, there's no theological tradition. It's only in the minds of some pastors and many Christians who have listened to misinformation and frankly are taking their cues from the culture wars and from politics and not from the Bible.
So our Ellie Reeve has done a lot of reporting on the issue of vaccine skepticism among evangelical Christians. And, you mentioned some pastors, and I just wanted to play what she heard from some of those pastors who are fueling the skepticism you refer to. Here they are.
I would rather die free than I had to live on my knees.
How is it living on your knees to take a vaccine?
Because you're bowing against your convictions.
Members of my congregation can do what they want to, but they'll watch my videos and know that I'm not getting it.
So you expect them to model your behavior?
I expect them to use their Bible and use their brain.
So those are two pastors, and you heard the second pastor there, Greg Locke, saying people should use their Bible, and they would come to the conclusion that it's against getting vaccinated. What do you say to those pastors?
Well, notice that he never actually cited any biblical verse to justify that view, because there isn't. And in fact, the weight of Scripture would compel Christians to actually take the vaccine out of love for neighbor, even if you don't think you need it for yourself. That's the second greatest commandment Jesus offered: love your neighbor as yourself. And so for somebody who is trying to actually care for the vulnerable student who can't get vaccinated himself, a patient, an immunocompromised patient, a customer who's elderly, who might be more at risk, the love of neighbors should compel you from Scripture to take the vaccine. So there is no actually biblical warrant for resisting the vaccine. And in fact, our project, Christians and the Vaccine, have produced video after video debunking and refuting attempts by conservatives to hijack biblical values to justify anti-vaccination. And that's really what is going on. It is a hijacking of God, belief in God, to justify a position that actually stems from the culture wars of our day. It does not stem from the Bible or from scripture tradition, and it's really bringing God into a place to justify one's own personal beliefs.
And you mentioned the politicization, the hijacking, right? And you talk in your op-ed about how some Republicans have been calling COVID vaccines, quote, the mark of the beast, which of course is a symbol from the book of Revelations that shows allegiance to Satan. So how do you break through to people who have such deeply held beliefs? I mean, even those pastors you heard there, how would you break through to somebody who believes that?
Well, we're inviting them to actually look at Scripture. So we invite folks to come to our site, christiansandthevaccine.com, where we have a whole video on how to read Scripture, in particular that passage about Mark of the Beast. And I think what you'll find is that it's completely unjustified. And again, it is twisting and distorting Christian passages, biblical passages, to justify beliefs that actually stem from somewhere else. And one way you can tell that this is not coming from Scripture or coming from Christian tradition is by looking at the very simple fact that historically evangelicals, including white evangelicals who form the core of this resistance, have been immunized from a whole host of diseases. So it's insincere to say that there's a religious conviction when throughout history Christians and evangelicals have taken the vaccine and have actually supported vaccine mandates.
Curtis, I appreciate your time and explaining this. Thank you very much. I encourage anyone who hasn't seen his op-ed to please do so you can see his full argument there. Curtis Chang, thank you. And next, a prominent South Carolina attorney